Hey guys, QQ here with another tutorial. This is going to be about choosing your deck and how to do that in the first place. A lot of people have been telling me I don't know how to create a deck, and I think it's pretty much something that we all struggled with in the beginning. So I want to go through it really quick. This is going to be very basic. We're going to make future videos that go more in depth, but this is going to be a very basic version of things. So there's three golden rules that I like to talk about when I'm making my decks. The first is I want to be able to stop Mass Lizard. Um, Mass Lizard, it takes 15 lizards to base trade someone, and if you have two bases and you push across the map into the middle of the map and your opponent has 15 lizards, they can run past your army and snipe both your mills, and the game can just end. So you need to have a plan to kill the lizards. The next rule is going to be, can I stop a 1/2 base boar push or badger push? These are the most common pushes that you're going to see in the game, and they're going to happen at every single level. The worst people are going to use it, the best people are going to use it. So it's just something that you must be prepared for. You're like, QQ, what about a one base wolf push or two base? It's the same shit. It's you're gonna need the same things to defend against it, or two base. Like it's just this two base boar badger wolf is all basically the same concept as there. Like you're just gonna need to be able to defend it. Lastly, you need to be able to stop the squirrel, pigeon, mole, skunk push. This is also known as the this guy push. Again, something you'll see at all levels. Everybody tries to execute this build. It is very strong. As we know, skunks are the best unit in the game. There's no denying it. They are the most efficient. They get you to mid game. They are good at all stages of the game. So you just need to be able to stop this one base skunk push. It comes out fast, and you need to be prepared. So let's talk about different types of decks. Um, Basically, you want to have goals in mind for each deck. So with a board deck, the idea is basically like I'm going to build a boar, I'm going to get some falcons, and I'm going to push. So we start with these two units. We start with the boar and the falcon because the boar is there to soak up as much damage as possible, and then the falcons are there to do as much damage as possible. And we're going to try and ball our army up into this very, very tight little ball that they call it a death ball, and it's just going to move across the map and kill everything in its path. And I personally like having pigeons with this death ball to keep everything alive and keep the push going for as long as possible. Then obviously we're going to pick squirrels. You basically want squirrels in every single deck. Albeit there might be like 2% of decks out there that do not have squirrels. They're not the best decks, and you can't use them every single game. However, you can use it. But for right now, let's focus on just putting squirrels in your deck. After that, it really is up to you. Again, you usually want to have a skunk or chameleon in your deck. These are the units that let you get to mid game. So we're just going to put a chameleon in there. And then we're going to have a flex slot, which means it's something that adds a little flavors to your deck. So, for instance, maybe you lose to badgers a lot, so you want to add snakes to it, right? Snakes are great because they literally take down badger, they take down boar, they take down big units for very cheap, and you can react by putting down snakes. Or maybe you're like, okay, I'm sick of tier 1 based pushes, so I'm going to grab a turret, or I'm going to grab mines, or I'm going to grab wire, right? Or maybe I'll just go for skunks, so I can have skunks and chameleons in my army. I want to have the choice of either skunks or chameleons. So this is a great deck, and it's very easy. It makes a lot of sense. And you always have that plan of I want to build the boar, I want to get some falcons behind it, and push. And how do I get there? Well, I build squirrels in the beginning with some skunks, maybe some chameleons. Then I drop my boar, and then I mass up my falcons. So you always want to have a cohesive plan. Next up, we have the badger. Whenever we pick badger, The number one unit, what do we want? We want the pigeon. Badger has little health, and we need to keep it alive, so pigeons are a must-have. And then obviously we want the squirrels, right? You always want squirrels in your deck. It's kind of the thing. And then what else can we pick with this? Well, we can go chameleons. We can get some moles. And, falcons, never bad. All of a sudden we have a great deck on our hand for the same reasons, right? We open chameleons. We might be able to do some mole shenanigans in the beginning. We build our badger, get some falcons behind it, and then some pigeons, and go. Again, this is another deck where we want to just build a big giant ball of DPS and go across the map and kill our opponent. So same kind of thought process as a board deck. Yeah, it's basically the same idea of a board deck, but our badger takes a little bit more micro and a little bit scarier on one base than a boar, but also a little bit more slippery, right? So like we can lose that badger, and the main DPS from our army is going to be from that badger, where the boar is more of just like it's there just to soak up as much damage as possible, which is why we want so many falcons. Where the badger, we don't have to invest as many falcons to do the same amount of DPS, but if we lose the badger, it's a little bit more it's a little bit easier to die, right? So with the boar, like we kind of expect to lose the boar at some point, and that's okay because we have the falcons and the pigeons behind, or maybe we have just a nice tier 2 army. But with the badger, we have these pigeons to keep the badger alive. Once this badger is dead, it's very hard for our army to keep pushing. So that's something to keep in mind. Next, we have the wolf. The wolf-oriented decks. It is the highest skill ceiling of all the tier 3s, and I say that because the most amount of decisions can be made with the wolf because it buffs army. It's not a unit that you want to ball into a giant ball and move across the map willy-nilly. The wolf benefits the most from spreading your army out so that the most amount of units can concave and the most amount of damage can happen at a time. So with the wolf base deck, I actually like going squirrel lizard so I can set up flanks, right? I can have a good amount of squirrels on one side, a good amount of lizards on one side, and then two other units that really benefit from like major DPS from the wolf or the chameleon. They do 24 damage per second when they're wolf buffed, and falcons. Falcons already do so much DPS and they fly in the air, which makes it just such a good unit because not everything attacks the air. And then again with the wolf, you can have a flex slot. So if you want to go snakes or you want to go skunks, like it really is up to you. Again, you got to follow that rule of, can I stop mass lizard? Well, I have lizards in my deck, so I can stop mass lizard with my own lizards. Can I stop a one base boar push? Yeah, I got falcons. If I see a boar, I can put down my wolf. Like that's how I'm going to stop it. So remember, you got to ask yourself those 3 questions, and or maybe you go snakes because like, okay, the badger's coming, like I don't have time to put down my wolf, so I'm gonna have snakes just as a backup. And maybe you don't ball up your army with the snakes, or your late game has the snakes in it, and you just go cam falcon, and that's fine with the wolf. Like you don't need to be, just because you have it in your deck doesn't mean it needs to be your win condition. It can just be kind of like a safety pick. Next we have the owl. Now, back in the day, double owl is kind of the way to go. You'd put down 2 owls at a time, and it was a good pick. Like you could actually run it against most decks, and it would be fine. Like it could compete. Over time, it got nerfed. We saw the wolf owl meta for a while. Nowadays, in Modern Tooth and Tail, we see people like Melvin use the owl with a badger. So now we're getting into multiple tier 3 territory. Of course, because we have badger, now we have pigeon. So that's 3 slots right already off the bat. Half our deck is just basically for this late game. And then what someone like Melvin likes to do with the owl, skunks, and he'll go snake, and obviously squirrel. So something like this can be very good. Again, this is a very late game oriented deck. Nothing is going to outscale this. This is the highest scaling double tier 3 deck probably in the game because you can just keep building owls, you can keep building badgers. Like, it's never going to be bad. The badger allows you to keep massing up the owls, which is great. So this is what a modern day owl deck looks like. I've been trying to run something that looks like this. I don't know how great it is, but it works sometimes. I'm still trying to figure it out. But I think Melvin's deck is a little bit more reliable and gets the job done a little bit better. Skunks, like I said, Skunks let you get to mid game, Chameleons let you get to mid game, but you know, having AoE is really, really, really good. And if you have the choice between no AoE or AoE, go with the Skunks instead of the Chameleons. Skunks are just so much easier to use than Chameleons. Lastly, we have Kasha, the sniper. Now, old school of thought with the Fox was you need structures with it, and a lot of decks were like wire and balloon, and then you add a boar in there, and maybe you go Squizzard, or you just go, Lizard. Again, one of those like 2% decks that can work, and you need a second tier 3 with it. A couple of people have turned Fox on its head and has shown us how to use it. Meek, for example, is a really big advocate for singular Fox decks as a tier 3, and so is this guy who has the best micro in the game, showing us something that looks like this. Now, so the idea behind this deck is to pressure your opponent with these 5 units here, right? You can do your skunk push, and while you're in the face of your opponent, you're building a Fox behind it. This is all of one base. This could be with a campfire. So you're basically in your opponent's face, and they have to respect it because you're just attacking them. And at some point, you go home, you build the Fox, and then get back out on the map and like put your units back in the face of your opponent. And it answers the how do I stop Mass Lizard. Like, the idea of the Mass Lizard is like, how do I stop that? Well, I can just build 4 Chameleons and leave them at home, and then I can build 4 Skunks and go across the map with my Squirrel, Pigeon, Mole, Skunk, and leave the Chameleons at home. You can just left click everything, and that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. The Fox can stop boar and badger pushes, especially if you're doing a skunk push, like off one base. Like, most of the time, they're not going to be able to get a boar or a badger out. They're going to be more focused on getting up other tier 2 or more tier 1, or they're possibly expanding, and that's why you're able to do this push in the first place. So those are just some ideas of how to build a deck around a tier 3. Another thing that we've been seeing a little bit more often is something like this, where you have, Squirrel, Toad, and then you have a bunch of tier 2, where you drop the Toad, you just have a bunch of tier 2. And the idea behind this is you want to grab a lot of economy, try and get past that even 2 base mark, go to 3 bases if you can, and try to have more economy than your opponent. And once they've dropped the tier 3, we're going to try and punish that by attacking into your opponent with a tier 2 based army. So having a couple Skunks, having some Chameleons, having some Falcons, and one set of Ferrets. The one set of Ferrets is really strong in this scenario against most tier 3 decks because it pressures your opponent to come out of their base, or they're just going to fucking lose everything. And obviously it's not good to lose everything before your tier 3 comes out. Like, you're trying to defend until that tier 3 comes out. The Ferret basically nullifies that and makes you have to respect that. Again, we're answering all the questions. We can stop, the boar and the badger push with the snakes. We have our own Skunks against the skunk push, and Mass Lizard. Again, we have Chameleons, and that can deal with lizards quite well. One more deck I want to talk about is the Heart House deck, and the idea behind it is basically you have Ferrets and Falcons, you have Mines, Pigeons and Moles. Again, we're answering the question of, can I stop Mass Lizard? Yes, I have Mines. Squirrel Mine can defend against any tier 1 combination just fine. It can defend against Squirrel Mole, it can defend against Squirrel Lizard, it can defend against Squirrel Toad. Just depends on your micro, really. And then the idea behind this deck is kind of the same with that tier 2 oriented deck where we kind of want to stop any kind of shenanigans from going on. Usually this is a one base strategy, or we grab a campfire if our opponent wants to fast expand. We have the moles there to kind of stop that and delay that. We can sell the moles after delaying the second base, go into our tier 2, and then kind of just push, right? So we have the ferrets, which are long distance units, kind of poking from afar. We're laying down mines while the push is happening. And then the falcons are there for that raw DPS. And then, of course, squirrels are there, just, you always want squirrels in your army. And then pigeons are there for the sustain. So this is another type of deck you can use, and it's definitely a great play style. I do this all the time. In my best ofs, like if you want to switch it up, I think it can be really nasty against certain players. Some players have decks that completely wreck this, but, if you're trying to fight someone who's going for, fox or wolf, badger, boar, all those kind of decks can get punished by the ferret, falcon, mole. Owl is actually one of those things that can absolutely crush this kind of deck. But right now, you're not seeing too many people pick Owl, so this is a very, very perfectly fine deck to use. So that is just the very basic way of building decks and how certain deck types work and what you're trying to do with them. I think we will go more in depth into matchups later on this week. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching.